Alright, hello everyone, my name is Ian Moorhead, and today I'll be talking about race and police violence, and specifically Colin Kaepernick, or I'll hereby refer to him as Cap, just to make it easy. So first we're going to talk about Colin Kaepernick, the quarterback. He graduated from Nevada, was drafted by the San Francisco 49ers in 2011. In 2012, their starting quarterback got hurt, and he took over the job and led the team to the Super Bowl. And then the year after, he led the team to the NFC Championship. So in his first couple years, very successful, but in his later years in his career, he struggled. So from 2014 to 2016, he really struggled. He eventually got released by the team. So the story is he a success as a quarterback or not? He had a 500 record as a starter, 32-32, 72 touchdowns to 30 interceptions, and 13 rushing touchdowns. Those stats come from NFL. The 13 rushing touchdowns is especially remarkable from a quarterback because the record is about 55, and that's still being run up now by Cam Newton. But for a quarterback to have 13 in his first couple years is pretty remarkable. So we'll start with the movement. So in 2016, this marked the beginning of Kaepernick's movement. It centered around the discrimination, profiling, and unfair treatment that people of color received by law enforcement. He was also voted this year, before the protests began, that he was the most disliked player in the NFL. From USA Today, Cap was disliked by 29% of polled people, and this number was staggering because 2 years ago when this same poll was taken, he was only disliked a lot by 6% of the poll participants. So then we'll get to the kneel down, which I'm sure most of you have heard about or seen. So first, Kaepernick sat. In week 3 of the preseason in 2016, Colin Kaepernick sat during the Star Spangled Banner of the San Francisco 49ers preseason game and faced horrible backlash from the viewers of the NFL. He later talked with Nate Boyer that week. Nate Boyer was a former NFL player and U.S. military veteran. And after chatting with Nate, he decided to kneel because Nate told him that kneeling still showed respect to the flag and the veterans, but Colin Kaepernick was trying to protest something that he knew needed to be protested. And despite all this, even showing that he spoke with Nate Boyer, he still faced heavy ridicule. And some of the ridicule he faced, on the left, there's Boomer Esiason, who's a former NFL MVP and Pro Bowl quarterback, and is currently an analyst on CBS and Showtime for NFL programs. He said, Colin Kaepernick is an embarrassment and is about as disrespectful as any athlete has ever been. And that comes from Newsday. And then on the right, I'm sure you guys know who that is too, Donald Trump, president, former TV star, The Apprentice, one of the best shows ever. We can fight about that another time though. He called for the dismissal of all players protesting. And several other people commented on this as well, such as Cowboys owner Jerry Jones. He said that any Cowboy, he's the owner of the Dallas Cowboys, he said that any player that sat or knelt during the national anthem would be kicked and fired, or would be kicked off the team and then fired. So why the protest? First, 2 of the most prominent cases are Boys on the Board. First brought to light the racism. The first one involving Trayvon Martin brought light the racism that's still here in the United States. And the second one brought the attention to the law enforcement versus people of color case. So on the left is Trayvon Martin. He was visiting family and unarmed and shot and killed by a gated community guard, George Zimmerman. The gated community guard was guarding the community that Trayvon was returning to, and he only went to a convenience store. And Zimmerman called authorities and said, he's running, and the authorities said, are you following him? And they said, yes. Zimmerman said yes, and he's like, okay, well, you don't need to do that. Well, later, not even 5 minutes later, it was found that Zimmerman shot and killed Trayvon Martin. And he ended up being acquitted on the grounds of self-defense, which there was a struggle that ensued when Trayvon was shot, but I think anybody that's unarmed with a bag of Skittles would fight back on a security guard trying to take your life. And the second on the right is Tamir Rice, a 12-year-old boy who was shot and killed by an officer. Tamir had an airsoft gun that did not have the orange clip for a safety, which made it look like a real pistol. but the officer took matter into his own hands without even checking to see if the pistol was real or obviously it's an airsoft rifle. And the officer was also found later to be deemed an unfit recruit for law enforcement. So next we're going to get back into Kaepernick and what he's been up to. In 2017, he was on the cover of GQ, Citizen of the Year in November. This was his second time on the cover, actually, the first being, he was still an avid mover for people of color rights and equality back when he was still a quarterback, and he was on the cover back when he was being successful on the field and trying to get his message across off the field as well. This brought Kaepernick back in 2017, because 2 months before this he was released by the team and no longer a part of the NFL, so people kind of lost his message. This was kind of a way of bringing it back. He was put on the cover because of his bravery and because of his commitment to a movement that needed to happen. And finally, I'll touch on the Nike ad, which came out this year, just last September, so not even a month ago. Social media turned against Colin Kaepernick. There were several videos of people burning Nike clothing, which is just absolutely absurd. However, a poll from Quinnipiac University showed that 49% of polled Americans supported Colin Kaepernick and his movement, and while 37% admitted that they did not support Colin Kaepernick, his movement, or Nike. And the numbers that weren't in there were people that just didn't care. So, and that came from Washington Post. Nike stocks dropped dramatically that morning when the ad dropped, but when the market closed at 4 p.m., the stocks were at an all-time business high. Now I'm going to pull up the ad that Nike released because I think it's pretty moving.
If people say your dreams are crazy, if they laugh at what you think you can do, good. Stay that way. Because what non-believers fail to understand is that calling a dream crazy is not an insult. It's a compliment. Don't try to be the fastest runner in your school or the fastest in the world. Be the fastest ever. Don't picture yourself wearing OBJ's jersey. Picture OBJ wearing yours. Don't settle for homecoming queen or linebacker. Do both. Lose 120 pounds and become an Ironman after beating a brain tumor. Don't believe you have to be like anybody to be somebody. If you're born a refugee, don't let it stop you from playing soccer for the national team at age 16. Don't become the best basketball player on the planet. Be bigger than basketball. Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. When they talk about the greatest team in the history of the sport, make sure it's your team. If you have only one hand, don't just watch football, play it at the highest level. And if you're a girl from Compton, don't just become a tennis player. Become the greatest athlete ever. Yeah, that's more like it. So don't ask if your dreams are crazy. Ask if they're crazy enough.
Subscribe for more. So I think Nike's slogan of "Just Do It" kind of goes with Kaepernick and his movement, which I believe is part of the marketing behind it. But he basically left football, gave up his career. He didn't choose to quit, but when he started this movement, the league almost gave up on him. So he just did it. He just went along with his movement. He knows it's bigger than the game of football. And finally, we're going to talk about Kaepernick and where he'll be in the future as an athlete. So a lot of people think Kaepernick won't play in the league again because of his reciprocity that he's created with the league, with the animosity that they've created. But also a lot of people think that the league is white, blue collar, and that's how a lot of the owners are. So they think that the league already hates him, they'll never sign him. But that's one thing I don't agree with. Kaepernick will not play football again, basically because he's suing the league for a lot of money. No one's ever going to hire you if you're suing the league, especially right now when people think Kaepernick should have a backup job somewhere, which he probably could. No one's ever going to be like, yes, you're suing us for $40 billion, let's pick you up for more money. Kaepernick was also a mobile quarterback by trade. He ran, he left the pocket, and they don't have as long of careers anyway. He's turning 31 in November, and he's going to be too old by the time this all caps off. And he also struggled after 2013. He lost his starting job several times. And he wasn't the QB really anyone needed, but he is the figure that everyone needs to look up to. Here are my references. Thank you for listening.